Welcome to Iowa Primetime Live. 2 days until the Hawkeyes return to Kinnick Stadium to open up the 2025 season against the FCS Great Danes of Albany. And you're tuning into Iowa Primetime Live. My name's Zach Heine. He's Josh Helmer. I want to thank you for joining us on the show tonight. Josh, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Mr. Heine, I'm doing great. Great to be with all of you. Iowa at the voice of college football, and here we go. A couple of days away from this thing. We've talked ourselves to death, and we'll do a little bit more talking tonight, but we're about ready to boot this thing off.
Yeah, we've broken down and analyzed about every single piece of news and media and practice availability that we possibly can, and now it's time to actually get going with real football on the field against another opponent. It's going to be a blast over there in Kinnick. I know that's going to be rocking, and that swarm is going to hit very different in 2025 with the expectations that this Iowa football team has as we enter a new season. But I think we'll start tonight just by talking a bit about Iowa's opponent, because I think we've gotten, and I've been someone who's I've done it this week. Like, I've kind of not analyzed Albany as much because they're an FCS school. Many people assume Iowa will just kind of take care of business as they should, and I'm in that camp as well. But I want to be fair to every Iowa opponent. And we're going to break down Iowa State and Rutgers and Wisconsin and everyone this season. So it's let's give Albany a bit of credit as well for what the program that they've put together. And so we'll take a listen to what Kirk Ferentz had to say about Albany and his team's prep heading into week one, and then we'll come back and dive a bit deeper into the Great Danes.
First game, especially for our entire football team, a lot of players, high percentage of our guys haven't really been out there playing offensively and defensively when it counts, and those kinds of things. That never changes. Haven't been out there in front of 70,000 people, and so we'll be curious to see how they all react. And every first game has its challenges, and this is no different playing Albany. A lot of unknowns in terms of what they're going to do schematically. They have had a coaching change. Coach Gattuso left, went back to his alma mater, and Coach Ambrose has been elevated to the head coaching spot. Still, I'm sure, very involved with their offense. He was the offensive coordinator last year. And so schematically, I think all three phases, we expect them to be fairly similar, but you just never know what they've done in the out of season, that type of thing, and that's true each and every game when you open a season. And then, obviously, new players, too. They've got guys that have graduated, moved on, new players coming in, and then transfers that you really haven't seen on film. So, there's a lot of guesswork on our side. Same thing for them, I'm sure. And bottom line is you want to be as alert, sound as you possibly can. And the team's got to be ready to adjust as the game goes on, because I'm sure there'll be some things that we're going to have to react to and see if we can do a good job there. So, it just gets really down to, solid execution, solid focus, and like all first games, just like bowl games at the end of the season, penalties, miscues, ball security, special teams. You don't want those things to be things that are going to, put a hole in your boat, that type of deal. So.
All right, and that was the Iowa head football coach, Kirk Ferentz, talking about Albany a little bit under their new head coach, talking about some things he wants to see from his team heading into week one. So, Josh, what are your thoughts on this Albany team? Kirk Ferentz mentioned the new head coach. They have about 50 new players on this roster through the transfer portal and a big freshman class as well. So, taking a look at the Great Danes of Albany, what do you think?
Well, my thoughts are that it should be an overmatched opponent, respectfully to Albany for Iowa, and I expect it and hope that it would play out that way for the Hawkeyes. But as Kirk Ferentz said right there, they don't totally know what to think or expect with Albany. There's some newness that they're unfamiliar about. So really, like any week one, Zach, I think, again, you can measure what did our physicality look like if you're the Hawkeyes? Probably not totally opening up the playbook versus this type of opponent in Albany. But you can measure, okay, that offensive line for the Hawkeyes that returns a lot, how effectively did they push Albany around? So that's going to be one thing that I'm definitely watching versus Albany for Iowa in this game. And then what Kirk Ferentz talked about there too, Zach, which is we got to take care of the football. We got to value the ball. That obviously we can certainly evaluate pretty simply in this game versus Albany too. Do guys protect the football? Do they let a couple of footballs get onto the Duke Slater field a couple of times on Saturday? So hopefully the answer is no. Iowa doesn't allow that to happen, and they go pounce on the football a couple of times. But look, it's a great test for Albany coming in, taking on Iowa. And it's hopefully for Iowa a nice opportunity to find out about really, okay, how far along are we with Mark Gronowski with this offense? What does running back look like for us? Do we have somebody that's emerging as a bell cow there? And so many other storylines. Offensively, Addison Ostringa, Zach Ortworth, what does that look like? I just expect that we're going to see, hopefully for Iowa, a lot of kind of everybody versus this opponent. And it will give Kirk Ferentz and Tim Lester and Phil Parker and their respective offensive and defensive coaches a good amount of tape to look and see, okay, we saw some positive things, and maybe here's a couple of items we want to clean up before a big-time test on the road at Iowa State.
Yeah, and I think it'll be, it'll be great to see what this Iowa passing game can do against Albany, because when I did my deep dive into Albany in my preview, their defensive back group is probably the strongest unit on that team, or at least on the defense. They bring back a couple of really talented guys. Denzel Patrick is a defensive back for them. He had 54 tackles, a couple of passes defense, and a forced fumble last year. Cam Stodhill had 49 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 quarterback hits as a DB last year. And they brought in a transfer, Amari Hill from Davidson, who had 2 picks and 5 passes defensed with Davidson last year. And so that's probably a unit that Albany feels pretty good about as I head into Iowa City. And so it'll be a good test, as good of a test as you're going to get against an FCS opponent in week 1 to see what your passing game is capable of. Obviously with Mark Gronowski in the fold, and we've heard a lot of good things about Seth Anderson in camp and the running back group and the offensive line, beginning to gel together. And so I think that passing game is really going to be what I'm looking for, at least on the offensive side of the ball, against an Albany team that on the surface looks like it has a pretty strong secondary, considering the level of football that they're playing at the FCS level. And so I think it should be a fun test for that Iowa passing offense against the Great Danes. And
this was not a good Albany team a year ago. No. They were 4-8. They were 2-6 in the CAA. So yep. The difference in levels between the FBS, Big Ten, and obviously where Albany comes from, and the fact that Albany isn't coming off, a 10-2 season or a 9-3 or better than that. So with that as kind of the backdrop, yes, I'm with you that, look, there's some nice returning talent in that defensive backfield, but Iowa, we would suspect, will have its way against that defensive backfield. And really, more than anything, what I'm hoping to see, Zach, is a lot of what you discussed, which is the passing game. I understand we're not going to see all the wrinkles on Saturday, but can you give me an explosive or two? Can Sam Phillips, who was a surprise atop this Iowa depth chart, can he go give me a chunk play in the receiving department? The Chattanooga transfer for Iowa. What about Jacob Gill? What does he look like now with a quarterback that, comes in a lot of success in Mark Gronowski? So the throw game, no doubt, will be something that kind of everybody in Kinnick Stadium wants to see. What exactly does that look like?
Yeah, and it'll be a a good test for the rest of the regular season, because I've said it multiple times, and I think many Iowa fans agree. Iowa will go as far as Mark Gronowski can take them this year. If he is, if he plays to the level that many fans are hoping and potentially expecting him to play at, Iowa will most likely, do the kind of things that the fan base wants them to do, contend for double-digit victories, potentially be a dark horse playoff team. If Mark Gronowski and the passing offense doesn't take that next step, then it's going to be more, questions to answer about that unit going forward. And so I think I'm not breaking any, I'm not breaking any news here when I say that the passing game for Iowa needs to take a step forward again under Mark Gronowski. But I am breaking some news that we have some merch here for Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Brand new merch. You can check out the link in the description to get that, and the link right on the screen here. So we have some very nice new hats, camouflage hat, and t-shirts as well, and all sorts of colors, yellow, black. So you can wear it to the game for any, for the stripe out or the gold out, or whatever the theme is for the at Kinnick. You can wear it. You have a nice koozie right there, the game day, the mug that I know Josh is very excited about, and a tumbler, as well as some more merch, as well as some sweatshirts and whatnot. So we'd love if you support the channel here and the Voice of College Football by buying some merch. It looks really, really good, and that link will be on screen and then in the description as well for you to check out there. But one of the things that was kind of a concern, Josh, at Kids Day, and then through some of the early camp practices as well, was some snap issues between Mark Gronowski and Logan Jones. And Gronowski was talking to media yesterday, and he addressed, those snap issues and how he believes that they're being worked out before the season opener.
And obviously, it was the first time in Kinnick. A little bit of, obviously, some jitters being there and first time in there, but we got those things cleaned up in practice, and then it was only our 7th practice. So there's still a lot of time to clean all that stuff up, and that's just little minor details that we just got to lock in and focus on. And I feel really good about how the offense has been cleaning up on those details.
What are some of those minor details that you've worked on over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it's just getting those couple extra reps after practice and even before practice with just the snaps and the certain distance of where I'm standing compared to Logan Jones, and knowing on certain plays the ball may be coming out a little bit hotter when we have a run play or something like that. Also, just with the receivers and some certain throws, when there is guys in front of me, just continuing to working on getting throws around people instead of trying to kind of loft some balls over to.
All right, so Josh, hearing Mark Gronowski there talking about fixing those snap issues that a lot of fans were kind of concerned about after Kids Day. Are you concerned about those issues, popping up in the regular season, or do you think that was just kind of, as you mentioned, some early jitters?
I have, a mild concern with it. I do think probably more so it was maybe some rust with Logan Jones and some unfamiliarity with Mark Gronowski. So everybody just trying to get on the same page. But I do know that Mark Gronowski in that game versus Oklahoma State, they had some issues with some snaps at times. So that tells me that maybe every now and again, he's kind of had some problems with handling the snap. So I'm going to say some mild concern. I chalk it up more to, I think it will get ironed out, but it's definitely going to be an item that I'm watching in this opener because, look, you know this, I know this, everybody, all of our wonderful fans tonight on Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the Voice of College Football, they're no dummies. They know that if you have the types of mistakes with snapping the football back, that's going to get you beat against good opponents and against the Big Ten slate that Iowa will face. So it needs to get cleaned up. I'm confident that, Zach, it will get cleaned up, but we need to see that it has, in fact, gotten cleaned up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a wait and see, approach with that. Like, we won't probably know until weeks 3, 4, or 5, at the earliest, if these issues have really been cleaned up, because, it can pop up at any time. I think, it's just important for Iowa to play a clean brand of football against Albany. A fumble here or there might not cost you like against the Great Danes on Saturday, but that would cost you against Iowa State, against any of the Big Ten teams that you play on your schedule this year. And so, taking care of the football is something that Kirk Ferentz really values, and he's shown that like he's not afraid to bench players who put the ball on the ground. Obviously you're not going to bench MarkRogersTV for a fumble, but some of these are running backs who are fighting for that bell cow role, or even if a receiver coughs up the football, like we've seen with this program that they're not afraid to put someone on the bench for putting the ball on the ground. And so, it's really important. Ball security is crucial. And again, it might not cost you against Albany, but you just got to hold on to the football. You got to hold on to the football.
And even if it doesn't out and out wind up with, an opposing jersey pouncing on the football, you have that type of snap miscue, Zach, and you waste it down. And probably the way that it went on Kids Day, I mean, you're backing up and you're killing a whole drive. So while you might not out and out turn the football over, you've basically wasted an offensive possession because you've put yourself so far behind the sticks, or you've wasted it down. And we know with Iowa, the field position game, it's a real thing. Iowa believes that it's an advantage to lean on this defense that so many times if they score north of 20 points, they win most every single time. And so they're going to lean on the field position battle. They're going to trust Reese Dakin. They're going to trust Drew Stevens to go kick their way to victory at times, even with what we hope and think with MarkRogersTV will be an enhanced passing attack and offense. But those types of mistakes that are drive killers can't have that. And I don't think that they will, but look, we can only go off what we've seen so far, and we did see some of those issues from Kids Day.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head right there with, it can kill a drive. It's even if it doesn't end up on the, with the other team gaining possession. If you move back even 5 or 6 yards, this offense, let's be honest, over the last 5 years has yet to show that they can consistently pick up, or go from a second and 15 to a first down. And it's like anytime that you're behind the chains, you're just asking for trouble in this offense. And I hope that we get to a level eventually where, a second and 13 isn't as scary because you can trust the offense to put the ball in the air and pick up some big yardage. But as of right now, that's basically a drive killer. And so holding on to the ball, not turning it over, it's going to be big for Iowa this season if they want to play that field position game and continue to win. But another big thing for Iowa is the left tackle spot. It's been a debate all off season. Who's going to win the job? Is it Jack Dotzler? Is it Trevor Lauk? We even heard, a Cannon Leonard was in the running at some point, and that's not a thing anymore as of right now. But it seems like Dotzler and Lauk are your two guys that are still fighting for that role. And Kirk Ferentz, was talking about how it goes back and forth every single day, but he did reveal who will be starting on Saturday at that left tackle spot for Iowa. And it might be a bit surprising from what we had heard prior. So here's Kirk Ferentz talking about that left tackle starter on Saturday.
I think, as I stand here right now, whatever time it is on probably about 2 o'clock, right on Tuesday, we'll start Trevor, but Jack's going to play. I'm sure he'll play him, and because it is that close. And I think they both have earned it. They both have done a good job. Sometimes it's because you don't have one, and you got to play two, but I think we have two guys that are really have made significant ground and gained significant ground. So then we'll just keep playing, and if it ends up that we got 6, 7 guys that can play starting level football on the line, we'll play them all. No question about it. Usually you don't have that. But if we do, we'll play them, and, that'd be a good thing. And we got some guys that are really close, so it's going to be fun to see how it develops here.
6 or 7 guys on the offensive line, if they're if their starter capabilities, they'll play, according to Kirk Ferentz. Trevor Lauk to start. Jack Dotzler is going to play as well. And I know our good friend Riley Donald over with Hawkeyes Wire, he had texted us that when you have two, you have none at a starting offensive line spot. A bit worried about Iowa not outright picking one guy to be the starter at left tackle over the other. So, what do you think about that, Josh? First with Trevor Lauk officially getting the start, but then also Iowa being very non-committal with that position as of right now.
Well, congratulations to Trevor Lauk, though, as Kirk Ferentz said, Jack Dotzler is going to play, and he's going to play a lot. So while Lauk is getting the start, Zach, I guess I'm buying the idea that this battle is still undecided, that it's not totally finished. Maybe Lauk winds up winning this job, but Kirk Ferentz has been pretty outspoken for a little while now that Jack Dotzler, dating back to the spring, has been one of Iowa's most improved players. He had made the remark, too, that Dotzler was one of Iowa's most improved and that he really didn't kind of have a great open practice performance. He didn't end the spring all that great. And so I think the coaching staff, Kirk Ferentz and George Barnett, they have to, right, put not all of the weight upon it, but I think you do, Zach, put a little extra weight upon, okay, what happens though it's not 70,000 plus inside Kinnick Stadium? And we've had this discussion on other items before, though it's not 70,000 plus for the open spring practice or for Kids Day at Kinnick. I do think that carries maybe a little bit more weight when there's a few butts in seats and you go and you see somebody that hasn't really played a ton for you before, Zach, not look like entirely the player that you saw throughout spring practice. And that was kind of the case, Kirk Ferentz said, with Jack Dotzler. Now, he had a much better Kids Day at Kinnick, and he's been one of the top risers throughout camp and throughout really just the spring work through the fall. So all of that is to say, I feel Iowa has an ongoing battle at left tackle, which when that's the case, that's probably not necessarily the greatest thing. I will reserve a little bit of judgment on this. You're replacing a 4-year starter in Mason Richmond. So you had an anchor over there, left side, left tackle, quarterback's blind spot on the offensive line. And Iowa, at least based on the fact that they've named Lauk the starter, but Dotzler's going to play a bunch, they don't have the guy yet. So, yeah, I guess I have a little bit of concern on that front, but we'll see. Let's see what it looks like on Saturday, and hopefully somebody we can look back upon what we saw against Albany, and maybe it's both that Lauk and Dotzler are both pretty impressive coming out of this thing, and we all feel better about it for Iowa once this game versus Albany is concluded. But that's an important position, Zach. So if you force me to pick, are you happy that they haven't figured out who's at left tackle and there's not just the definitive name? No, you'd rather, I think, have the definitive name, though I'm buying also that Iowa likes both guys and their potential.
Yeah. Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football. It is our call-in show, so make sure that, we'll be getting as we'll get to that a bit later on in the show, but 2 days until kickoff at Kinnick. But we're talking about the left tackle spot right now, and I'm a little uneasy about Iowa being non-committal towards a starter at the moment because, if you ask any current or former offensive lineman, what's one of the most important things for an offensive line to have, and it's having that camaraderie, and it's having that that bond of playing of like who the other 4 guys on your line are, and you have your own way of communicating, and you have your own way of figuring out how you're going to, communicate different pressures and blitzes and things like that. And so when you're flipping out and swapping left tackles at will, that worries me a little bit because, I think about Bo Stevens at left guard. He might have a certain way that he communicates with Trevor Lauk, and it's different than he does with Jack Dotzler. And same with Logan Jones, who's, calling out blitzes and things at the center spot. And so I think you're kind of just asking for trouble by being non-committal. And, I get it. Like, you want to leave your options open. And if Trevor Lauk is great on Saturday and Jack Dotzler isn't for some reason, then you can commit from there.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. Or vice versa. Yeah. But I do think by next week, we'll see a starter with no or tag. I don't think you'll be able to flip flop against Albany and get away with it. You won't be able to do that against Iowa State up in Ames. I think I think that'd be asking for a lot of trouble if you're doing that. And so, I said it in a story that I wrote, and I think it'll just ultimately come down to who plays better against Albany. And it's hard to tell because it is Albany. And so if someone plays well, it's an FCS school. It's kind of what you expect. But I think Iowa's really going to take a look at both guys here. And, you have to pick someone for Iowa State. And then going forward as well, you have to stick with that guy even through a few struggles. I think that's important for Iowa to not, if Trevor Lauck is your starter in Ames and he gives up a sack, no, he has to run back out there. Like, you can't just swap left tackles at every time someone makes a mistake because you're going to be in and out all season long. And so I think it'll be important before next week. Iowa's got to pick that starter.
And I don't think it's any secret, and I'm not giving out the game tape here or the keys to victory for Iowa opponents. It's no big secret that Iowa opponents are going to test either Lauck or Doetzler, because that's an inexperienced hand there, and because you have Jennings-Dunker on the other side, who's regarded as one of the Big Ten's and nation's finest offensive tackles. The best rusher that your opponent has, they're lining them up over Lauck or Doetzler. So somebody's got to really take that job and grab hold of it for Iowa to reach its potential. I think it's worth pointing out, too, that, maybe the coaching staff, they're saying that, look, it's really, really close right now. We like both. Doetzler's been one of the most improved, but let's call it what it is. They've got a little extra runway here to kind of just see what happens versus Albany, right? This is not shouldn't be a super pressure-packed situation coming out. So they'll have a way to kind of ease into this thing a smidge, but obviously not a ton of runway, a little bit of extra runway, but then you got Iowa State, so you do need to get this thing sorted out. But that has to be right if we're talking about this game, Zach. Left tackle, what happens there? I'm curious just to watch all of the running backs and see if anybody kind of breaks away on that front. The tight ends, if it's Addison Ostringa, if it's Zach Ortworth, can one of those guys really elevate in this opener and show us? Addison Ostringa's the starter, right, going in, but we've seen both play at Iowa and do some nice things at times. So because of Iowa's history at that position, can somebody sort of show that, hey, I'm going to emerge this season early versus Albany? I'll be curious for that. Flipping over to the defensive side of the football, I'm curious to watch what happens with Bryce Hawthorne up front on the interior, with him winning that job, at least for the moment, with Jeremiah Pittman still kind of inching his way back from that knee cleanup. I'm curious to watch the linebackers. A couple of new backers there. I love what we've seen from Shire. I'm excited to watch Harrell. And I would imagine, we're going to see more than just those two guys in this game. We're going to get to see a lot of hopefully we get to see, the Weisskopfs and the Reeses of the world in this game. We get to see some young backers there, but curious to watch the backers. Obviously, the corners, how do they hold up? Do we see a TJ Hall? Do we see a Deshaun Lee? Zach, even from day one in week one, that it looks like they've really elevated their play and have taken a step forward. So there's going to be a lot to really watch. But obviously the left tackle position is going to be right. If it's not the quarterback and it's not the passing game, then left tackle certainly will be chief among what folks want to see.
Yeah, I think all 72,000 eyes inside Kinnick Stadium are going to be on that left tackle. As the offense trots out there for that first drive and just seeing, can they protect Mark Gronowski? I'm most excited on defense, at least, to watch the secondary. I think the Doughboys are going to be in for a big night. Albany quarterback Van Weber is a sophomore, and he played in 3 games last year, and he threw 4 picks in those 3 games. And so, this is a guy that, has had some trouble with keeping the ball out of harm's way. I think I made a prediction for Hawkeyes Wire that someone's going to take one of the house on Saturday in that secondary. I don't know who. I'm not Nostradamus when it comes to that, but I think someone's making a house call on Saturday night out of that Iowa secondary. But I'm really excited to see those corners, but the safeties as well. Cohen Entringer has been someone who's received a lot of hype this year, so excited to see what he can do. Xavier Wampa is facing a make or break senior year for him. And then obviously Zach Lutmer in that cast role as well, just seeing what he can provide. And so I'm just excited for Iowa football to be back on the screen on Saturday. It's going to be a blast. And I hope after the game, after the festivities are over, I'm going to be here at Iowa at the Voice of College Football hosting the post-game show. So it'll be a later post-game show after Iowa versus Albany. And so make sure you join me right here to break down the game. We're going to be talking about every single thing that happened. How did the left tackle play? How was Mark Gronowski? How was the offense? How did the special teams and the defense look? So make sure you're tuning in to the post-game show on Saturday after Iowa takes on Albany. And then Josh, I know you have to head out here. I'm going to handle the second half of the show solo for our call-in special. But before you head out here, do you have any bold predictions or a score prediction or anything that you want to predict? Put on put that hat on and what's going to happen on Saturday?
Let's go. I think Mark Gronowski impresses, throws a couple of touchdown passes, and I think we'll see. I think we're going to see Sam Phillips find the end zone. He's been elevated to the depth chart. We've heard some good things from Gronowski about Sam Phillips. So I'm going to say that Iowa makes it a point to show some of the exciting newness inside Kinnick. But I just expect the offense to – it's not going to be perfect, but I do expect them to roll it up pretty good at times in this game and to excite this fan base. So I'm going to take Iowa. Let's see, a good number for us. I'll say 48-10 Iowa, and I believe that's just enough to cover for the Hawkeyes in this thing. But that's going to do it for me, man, tonight. Thanks for letting me hang out for a little bit. And obviously, everybody have a great rest of the show. I think I'll be able to jump on, at least for a little bit, a post-game with you. But it will be fun, my friend. I'm looking forward to it. I'm off to broadcast a little high school athletics tonight. But enjoy the football, my friend. And I'm sure that all of us will talk on Saturday night after a big Iowa victory.
Yeah, that's the hope right there. And I'll be back after the break, and we'll have the actual call-in show. So make sure that you're calling in, talking everything Hawks before they take the field on Saturday. Thank you, Josh. And yeah, we'll talk to you on Saturday.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
Welcome back to Iowa Primetime Live. It is our call-in show tonight, so I'm going to put that link in the chat. So if you feel so kind and you want to hop on and talk some Hawks with me, 2 days until the season opener against Albany, we would love to chat with you. But you just heard me and Josh talking a lot about this Iowa offense heading into week one against Albany, touching on the defense a little bit as well. But we did get some breaking news tonight, or this afternoon. Reese Vander injury news, and it's not good for the Hawkeyes. Apparently, yesterday he suffered a quote-unquote freak foot injury that's going to keep him out around a month. Obviously not a good sign for this Iowa offense. Reese Vander, a guy that many kind of expected to take a big step forward here in his sophomore year and his second year in this Iowa offense with Mark Gronowski in there. And now he's out close to a month. We saw Reese Vander, he was not listed as a starter on the Iowa depth chart. And, that got a lot of Iowa fans kind of up in arms about, beginning to question what his role was going to be on this offense. And now Reese Vander not going to be out there for the first month at the very least. And I think it really begs the question, what's Iowa's offense going to be like without Reese Vander? And I think if you take a look at the Iowa schedule here really quick, when you look at the schedule, 1 month from today would be September 28th. And so if Reese Vander misses a month with that foot injury, that would have him out the first 5 games of Iowa season, including at Iowa State next weekend. And then, of course, a big game against Indiana in a month. If he's able to, get a bit of a faster recovery time, I think, he might be able to be back for that Indiana game. But if I had to imagine what Iowa is going to do with a bye week, October 4th, it's probably smart to, not rush back Reese Vander. I expect him to probably return October 11th at Wisconsin. And that's probably where we'll see, Reese Vander make his season debut in this Iowa offense. But I think it really begs the question, what does the Iowa offense look like without Reese Vander? Does anything change? Because he was not listed as a starter. I think we all kind of expected, him to take a big step forward. But how does Iowa manage without Reese Vander? I think that is really the big question that should be on everyone's mind tonight, and as we get ready for kickoff here in 2 days. So I think the big thing for Iowa's offense without Reese Vander is those other receivers. And I think 2 guys in particular are going to really need to up their game to kind of pick up the slack that Reese Vander is leaving with that injury. I'm looking at the transfer Sam Phillips, who was listed as a starter over Reese Vander on the 2 deeps. And then Seth Anderson, who is a guy that me and Josh have talked about quite a bit here on Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football. Seth Anderson was someone who transferred into the program, I think it's 3 years ago now, 2-3 years ago. And, due to some injuries, due to some bad quarterback play, bad play calling, he hasn't broken out or been, the kind of guy that many Iowa fans thought he could be here with the Hawkeyes. And so I think he's a guy that now, being a senior, has a huge opportunity with Reese Vander out. They're going to rely on Seth Anderson quite a bit to make some plays in this Iowa offense. And so I think he's a guy that, Tim Lester, Mark Gronowski are really going to rely on to step up with Reese Vander out. And then Sam Phillips as well. He and Reese Vander are not similar types of receivers. Sam Phillips more of a slot guy at 5'7", and we know Reese Vander is more of an outside X kind of receiver. But nonetheless, it's an experienced player in Sam Phillips. He was productive at Chattanooga, and now he's going to be asked to take on a bigger role within this Iowa offense with Vander out. And so, how does Sam Phillips, step up in this Iowa offense here with the injury? That's going to be something that's going to be very telling about how this Iowa offense is going to handle being without one of their best wide receivers. And they should be able to take care of business against Albany and UMass without Vander, and probably against Rutgers as well. Although I will say, a shout out to Aaron there in the chat, keeping us updated on that Rutgers Ohio game, the first Big Ten game of the season underway. And Rutgers seems to be playing pretty well, as that game's probably right around halftime right now. But Rutgers is doing some good stuff there. So thank you to Aaron for keeping us all updated on that game. But you should be able to beat Rutgers. But it's that Iowa State in that Indiana game that Iowa is really going to need someone in that receiver room to step up, or even the tight end room as well. Zach Ortworth and Addison Ostrenga are going to be asked to take on more of a role as well. So I'm curious to hear everyone else's thoughts on that Reese Vander injury. Let me know in the comments. How does Iowa's offense handle being without one of its more high upside, high ceiling type of wide receivers? That's going to be a big question for Iowa, and they'll begin to answer that this weekend when they take on Albany in the home opener. Let's get to some of the comments here. Our man Kelvin, looking smart in the glasses. Young man, thank you, Kelvin, for tuning in to the show. Logan, this is Kirk's golden year. I'm calling it national champions. Okay, I would have no problem with that, obviously. And then Cody in the chat saying that he seconds that. So I think it's a fun discussion to talk about how can Iowa make the playoffs this year, because I think that there is a path, and I know me and Josh both predicted Iowa to go 10-2 this season, which would probably be a backdoor college football playoff berth if they pick up the right wins. And so I love the optimism in the chat for an Iowa national championship here in 2025. I would love to see that, of course. And then Scott as well. Hello, gentlemen. Go Hawks. Go Hawks indeed, Scott. Cannot wait for the season and home opener on Saturday against Albany. But, I mean, this Reese Vander news is just kind of a bummer 2 days before kick. That it came, it's coming out. Excuse me, because it just happened yesterday apparently. So it didn't have anything to do with the two deeps or the depth chart or anything like that. He wasn't already hurt, and then it got worse. It just happened yesterday. It was kind of a freak injury, as described by Matt Zemitz of CBS Sports, and so it's just really unfortunate for Iowa and this Iowa offense right before kickoff. Hopes and optimism are through the roof for Iowa heading into 2025, and then you get the news about Vander going down, and it's just really unfortunate for him, especially. He dealt with injuries last year in his freshman year, and also to his foot, and so something with those foot injuries with Reese Vander is a little concerning. But Iowa's offense is just going to have to manage without one of their better wide receivers, and we'll see how they're able to do that in this first month with those tough 5 games without Reese Vander. Let's talk about this opener versus Albany real quick, because I think most people, everyone is picking Iowa to win, and to win pretty big, to handle their business on Saturday, and I'm with that camp. But I think there's a couple things I need to see on Saturday, and then there's a couple things that I would like to see on Saturday's opener against Albany. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first,
you can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Rogers, for that. But moving into this opener here for Iowa on Saturday, it's not about whether they're win or not. I think most of us expect them to pretty easily take care of business. But I mentioned the tease before the ad there. It's a couple things that I need to see on Saturday, and a couple things that I would like to see on Saturday. And I'll start with the need to see. I need to see Iowa's passing offense connect on some explosive plays. That is a must for me in the season opener, because a lot of Iowa's hopes and dreams this season rely on that passing game taking another step forward, because since 2020, Iowa has not averaged more than 200 passing yards per game in a season, which is insane. That it's been 5 seasons. it's been since 2019 that Iowa averaged over 200 passing yards a game and across the season. That's just ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. 200 passing yards should be the bare minimum for any competent offense in 2025. And the fact that Iowa hasn't done that in 5 years is insane. And I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. But that needs to change this year. And I think we're going to start here against Albany. Obviously, if you come out and pass for 400 yards against Albany, like, it's an FCS school. It's kind of what you expect. But I need to see some explosive plays down the field for Iowa. Mark Gronowski hitting his receivers for big plays, with wide receivers getting open, running good routes, picking up some yak after the catch as well. I need to see that on Saturday. At least 2 or 3 explosive plays through the air for this Iowa offense. They need to start to show that they can be an explosive offense both on the ground and through the air. And so that's the first thing that I need to see on Saturday is an Iowa offense that looks absolutely explosive, both on the ground and passing the ball. The next thing that I need to see on Saturday is one of those 2 left tackles need to play very, very well. And I don't care who it is, if it's Trevor Lauk or if it's Jack Doetzler. I don't have a horse in the race, but I need to see one of those 2 guys come out and establish themselves as left tackle 1. Because I mentioned it in the first half of the show, but I get very concerned when you don't have an answer at left tackle or at any offensive line spot. When you're flip-flopping guys, when you're going back and forth, when you're being non-committal, that really worries me because, you can frame it positively like, oh, we have 2 guys that we really love at the left tackle spot. And that's great and all. But I think you need to pick one, if for no other reason than to start to develop some chemistry with the rest of the offensive line, because that's really important for an offensive line, is to have your 5 guys from left to right that know how to play with each other, that are comfortable with calling out audibles, are comfortable with communicating with each other. And when you keep switching out the left tackle every other possession, you're going to have some troubles with that. And you're going to have some miscommunications, and you're going to have a blitz that gets through on the left side, or a corner that isn't accounted for, or a guard that's supposed to pull and they didn't get the communication from the left tackle, and it didn't happen. Like, there's things that, like, there's just too many issues that can pop up when you're going back and forth on the offensive line with that left tackle spot. And so I need one of those 2 guys to play very well. If they both play well, that's awesome. But I need at least one to rise above the other one and show that, okay, I'm the left tackle going forward. And I'm going to get the start next week at Iowa State, because if you're flip-flopping left tackles up there in Ames next weekend against Iowa State, you are asking for so much trouble. You're asking for so much trouble. That cannot happen. Iowa needs to have a left tackle after this game on Saturday that they're going into Ames with. He's the starter all week. No more messing around with that. That needs to be figured out on Saturday. And my final thing that I need to see in Iowa's season opener against Albany is I need to see those linebackers ball out. Iowa is replacing a couple of all-conference, all-American linebackers in Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. And first of all, shout out to Jay Higgins for making the Ravens 53-man roster as an undrafted player. Incredible. I still don't know how he went undrafted. NFL teams way too often look at just the measurables and they skip the tape on players. And it's very obvious when certain players go undrafted that, an NFL team just looked at like, oh, their hand size was too small, or their vertical wasn't great, or their 40-yard dash was a little less than ideal. Instead of watching the actual tape of what they do on a football field, and that's what happened with Jay Higgins and with Nick Jackson as well, with going undrafted. And Higgins just made everyone look like an absolute fool by just absolutely balling out in the Ravens preseason, and he makes the roster. So shout out to him. But Iowa's two new linebackers, Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire, are being asked to fill some pretty big shoes that Higgins and Jackson left behind. So I need to see them make some plays on Saturday. Now, you're probably not going to have your starters playing the entire game against Albany. Probably just the first half and into the third quarter a little bit. But during that time, I need to see those two make some splash plays. We've seen Carson Shire in camp really impress and kind of, flash on the field. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. And Jaden Harrell is a guy who's been in the program a while as well. But those two guys, I need to see really play well on Saturday because, until they prove that they're, to that level the Iowa linebackers need to be at, teams are going to try and, attack them on defense. And I think it'll be important for Harrell and Shire as the anchors of that defense, calling everything out in the middle of the defense to play well. And I need to see that beginning on Saturday with those two going out there making some plays and showing that they're not liabilities on that defense, but they could be stars. And so those are the three things that I need to see on Saturday. And we got Seth in the chat. Go Hawks! And he says, I also want to see them not give up big plays. I agree. Albany's not the most explosive offense out there, but it is very important for Iowa in the situation to not give up the big play. We've heard Phil Parker talk about that all summer long because that was kind of an issue for this Iowa defense last year, very uncharacteristic. And so I agree with Seth, no big plays, especially against Albany. That cannot happen. And before we get into the things that I would like to see on Saturday, we got Scott in the chat as well. The only thing I'm worried about with Vander Z, I feel sorry for him and the team. I really hope that the injury bug does not continue with him. And yeah, it's really it's a little concerning that he missed a good chunk of last year with the foot injury, and now right before the season starts here, he's out with another foot injury for about a month. That's a little concerning for Reese Vander Z, and so you hope it's not a trend with him. It was called a freak accident, so it sounds like it was something kind of out of the blue that you probably wouldn't expect to happen. But obviously, we're open for a speedy recovery, and I'm assuming it'll be that game at Wisconsin that in mid-October that he makes his return this season. But yeah, it's just terrible for Reese Vander Z, as Seth in the comments say, that he hurt his foot two days before Iowa's season opener. But Seth brings up the depth of the wide receiver room, which is actually, Seth, you're in my mind because that's one of the things that I wanted to see in week one against Albany. Iowa's wide receiver room without Reese Vander Z making some plays. And he mentions here Jacob Gill, Sam Phillips, Seth Anderson, Jarriett Bowie, Dayton Howard, Caden Weechin. I would throw KJ Parker into that discussion as well. I think all of these guys are capable of making plays. We didn't see Bowie or Howard on the two deeps. I'm sure one of them went out up here with Reese Vander Z out for the next month or so. But I think Iowa's got these guys that have a lot of talent and we know can make plays. I think that it's just important for them to do it on an actual football field because we've seen it in camp and we've seen it in practice and we've seen it at Kids Day and all this stuff. But when it comes to making plays in games, Iowa's wide receivers haven't done that very consistently over the last couple of years. And so I think, that's one of the things that I really want to see on Saturday against Albany is all of these guys on the screen right here. Because, they're all going to play and they're all going to get some pretty decent snap counts. But, can they make plays without Reese Vander Z? I love Jacob Gill. I think he's someone that with with better quarterback play is going to be really good this year. Sam Phillips, I'm excited about. Seth Anderson, I'm excited about, but I need to see it on the field. And then Dayton Howard, we saw him make a big touchdown catch against Washington last year. Can he, do that a bit more consistently? Jarriett Bowie, someone who's been in the program a while. Caden Wheaton's kind of the wild card to me in terms of, right now he's more of a gadget player. I think defenses, until Cade Wheaton shows that he can run a more complete route tree, I think defenses are going to sniff it out right away. That when he's on the field, the ball's probably going to him on some kind of screen or end around or something like that. So if Cade Wheaton can run a more consistent route tree, I think that'll really help him and this Iowa offense to add some more explosiveness in the wake of the Reese Vander injury. But Iowa's got some depth there at that position, but can they show it on the field? That's the big thing, and that's what I want to see on Saturday. The next thing that I want to see on Saturday is one or two of these running backs shine. Because Iowa's got a pretty decent stable of running backs right now, but they don't really have that one guy. That one Tyler Goodson or a Caleb Johnson. And I know that Caleb Johnson went in the last season in a running back battle as well. But can we get one of those guys to emerge after this week? Whether it's Kamari Moulton, Terrell Washington, Jazz Patterson, Xavier Williams, Nathan McNeil is a freshman that's really, really been impressing in camp. Can one or two of those guys rise above the pack and, become that bell cow, especially heading on the road to Iowa State? Iowa is most likely going to go into that game trying to win on the line of scrimmage and in the passing game. And so I think it's going to be imperative for that running game to really step up in that game. And so do you have one or two that breaks away? I love Kamari Moulton, and I know Josh does as well. Terrell Washington is kind of a jack of all trades in terms of he can catch the ball, he can run the ball. Jazz Patterson is more of your thumper at running back, and then Xavier Williams and Nathan McNeil provide some really exciting young options in that running back room. And so can one of those guys emerge on Saturday? Can one of those guys break a big run? That's what I'm looking to see against Albany. And my final thing that I want to see in this game, and only because I called it earlier in the show, a pick six. A pick six from someone in that secondary making a play. A Cohen Entringer, a Zach Lutmer would not surprise me at all if he housed one of the corners, or I would love it to be X. I think Xavier Wampa really, really could use something like that with a confidence boost heading into his senior season. But this Iowa secondary making some plays and creating some splash. That's what I want to see against Albany. Whether it's forcing fumbles, passes defense, interceptions, whatever it may be, that unit is replacing a lot. Jamari Harris and Quinn Schulte and Sebastian Castro. And so can those guys who are replacing those players make plays? That's what I want to see on Saturday. And I think that they will. I've been high on Zach Lutmer all offseason. Cohen Entringer looks like a star in the making. And TJ Hall on the outside has been really impressive in camp. And so, can a couple of those guys make some plays in this game? That's what I want to see. And now that we're reaching the end of the show, I'm going to give my official prediction for Iowa versus Albany in week 1. I think the big question here is not if Iowa wins, it's if Iowa covers. The spread was, at 37.5 or 38.5 last time that I checked. And I do think that Iowa covers. I think Iowa wins this one 45-6 over Albany. I think the offense comes out in shines. Mark Gronowski looks good. The running backs are making some plays. The offensive line is dominating. And the offense, both Mark Gronowski and Hank Brown, lead multiple scoring drives. And I think Iowa's defense is just dominant all day long. That defensive line should have no issues completely dominating a revamped Albany offensive line, allowing those linebackers and secondary to make plays. And so I have Iowa winning 45-6 on Saturday to open up the 2025 season 1-0 en route to that national championship. Am I right, Logan and Cody? I hope so. But I want to thank all of you for tuning into Iowa Primetime Live tonight, and make sure that you tune in to Iowa at the Voice of College Football on Saturday, right after the game ends. Me and Josh are going to be on here talking about every single thing that happened in the game, from Mark Gronowski's play to the left tackle to the defense. We're going to be breaking it all down right here at Iowa at the Voice of College Football. So make sure that you tune into that. And then me and Josh are going to be back on Monday night with more post-game and beginning the Iowa State preview. Cyhawk Week coming up here very, very soon. But first, Iowa's got to take care of business on Saturday against Albany. So hope everyone out there enjoys the game on Saturday, whether you're watching from your couch or inside Kinnick Stadium. And we will talk to you after the game on Saturday. Until then, go Hawks and have a great night.